Hi, I'm Anthony Marinelli, and I'd like to do another throwback feature film demonstration that features the Synclavier. It was a movie that was a favorite of many called Stand By Me that had River Phoenix in it, Corey Feldman, Richard Dreyfuss, Kiefer Sutherland. I did another movie with Kiefer later that was called Young Guns in 1988, so this is all kind of in the same period of time. And this was a second movie that I had worked with Jack Nietzsche on. It was with my partner Brian Banks at the time, and we were doing sound design. We had just done quite an amazing amount of special sounds for Starman, which was a John Carpenter film, you know, sampling mosquitoes and using Jack's sounds from The Exorcist and sampling Buffy St. Marie, making these great vocal sounds, really elaborate. Stand By Me was a completely different movie with Rob Reiner. And on top of that, the first score was called The Body. And The Body was a book written by Stephen King. So the score was done. We had realized it all on Synclavier. There was no orchestra. And it was just, you know, some resynthesized sounds. And resynthesis is where you start with a sample and you have the Synclavier computer analyze the sample and then make an FM sound that's based on that sample. And the way it does it is it divides the sound up into frames, just like frames in film. So you have one frame, second frame, third frame, fourth frame, and each of those frames could be different lengths of time in milliseconds. And the synthesizer engine will analyze at any given point in time what that sample sounds like. So the attack portion might consist of 3 frames or 4 frames. And then the sustain portion will consist of maybe 7 or 8 frames. And then the release portion will consist of a few frames. And you put them all together and crossfade them, and you get a complex like sound with FM, a synthesized sound that has the complexity of a real life sound, like a sample. And those are the sounds I'm going to play for you, because all the sounds in Stand By Me were FM sounds. Now back to The Body. So what happened? We finished a score using FM synthesis and all of it inside the Synclavier. And when I say inside the Synclavier, I mean in the sequencer in the Synclavier. So there is a 16-track sequencer that you can see here, and you can punch in and record and rewind. So that score's done. Rob Reiner, who was the director, who was there for every minute of this, it was very easy to do. It was just a matter of performing Jack's notes that were on orchestral, like a 6-line orchestral score, right? It was only a few tracks. Rob Reiner comes in and says, you know what? I want to buy the song Stand By Me and change the name of the movie to Stand By Me, because I think it's a better story. And the song's going to evoke an emotion, and that's what it's about, standing by, you know, your friends, and it works. But I need a different score now, because I want to use the theme to Stand By Me. And Jack was running out of time to work on the movie, so he was kind of supervising us. But Rob Reiner would just come in and say, like, we need a cue for this, use the Stand By Me melody, and use the same types of sounds that you were using for The Body, these resynthesized sounds. And so here's what they sounded like. First sound was a resynthesized stand-up bass. Not an exact replica of a stand-up bass, but it was what we were going for because it was a little bit unusual. Then the other main sound was a resynthesized flute. You can see the 13 here. It's made up of 13 frames. So there's a few frames that make up the initial portion, the attack, a few frames for the sustain, and a few frames for the release. So here's the flute. So we would just sort of, like I just did, vibe out on the melody of Stand By Me and put it up against picture. And then another key sound that we used was a resynthesized wine glass. So resynthesis, to just break it down very simply, is starting with a sample, a recording of an instrument or a sound, and using Synclavier's computer to analyze it and create an FM synthesized sound version of that sample. Please remember to like and subscribe. It really helps us continue to make these videos. We have a great team here, so please push that button. The third sound that I want to show you that we used on the movie is a sample of wine glasses. When you basically wet your finger and go around the rim of a wine glass, it kind of makes like a whiny kind of sound, no pun intended, at different frequencies. And if you fill the glass up with more or less water, you get different notes. So we sampled wine glasses and then resynthesized those samples to create FM wine glasses on the keyboard. And we were able to play these beautiful tones. And they made up the background chords. Da, 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 da. So we can basically riff on, again, like I was showing you, riff on the melody of Stand By Me and create cues. Sometimes we would just hang out. And sometimes we would play the tune more in a regular fashion. Here's one of the cues that I'll just play it directly out of the Synclavier. You can hear the bass. It's up an octave from where I originally played it. And you hear the flute moving around in there a little bit. And the wine glasses are holding. And these cues in Stand By Me were made in about a week's time. The entire film was scored very much unlike the previous Jack Nitzsche movie that we worked on, Starman, where it was like elaborate development of sound and sound design, using multi-tracks to capture like layers and layers of sounds and then re-performing them on the Synclavier and then re-recording that to tape. This was just maybe 4 tracks on a sequencer playing the simple melody of Stand By Me and watching picture and just making it follow the action with the direct. And the advantage for, I'm sure for the director, Rob Reiner, was that he could be there while we were doing it and say, no, we don't want melody there, just give me sustains there. Or we need the melody to come in here and do an elongated version of the melody. Or another time, just play it. Just let it run, give me a bed, and it's gonna work for this montage. And due to the short time constraint, this was a great way to work because there was no tape machine like delays. It was just instant. So I could start and stop the sequencer, pick up where we left off, solo a track, just the bass. I could take that bass down an octave, or I can bring it back up an octave. I hit the transpose button. I'll do it down again. And then back up. So even after the fact, there was a lot of things that you could do quickly. And this is, remember, before MIDI was really used in film score construction, and it was before DAWs. So we really couldn't move things around so easily. And with the Synclavier, you could also, choose to work to a click track or not. And I think this cue was just free time. We would watch picture and just line up the sequencer, start it. Here's the wine glasses. Here's the flute part. Not much to it. And here's a great example for you. A lot of the time, someone will say, oh, you worked on Stand By Me. What an amazing score, Well, they say that because it's an amazing movie. And I think what I've said to everyone a lot, what's an iconic sound? Well, it's usually a good sound, but it's in an amazing song. And so if you focus on your songs and put good sounds in them, you could end up with iconic sounds. Stand By Me was a case where the sounds are really good sounds because we used a new technique, but the important part was that it was a really good film. And we made the sounds work with the film. And that's what you need to do every time you're trying to think about what sound you need for whatever song you're working on or film that you're working on. And the way to do that is to just take a step back, take a breath and think about, does the song need something that's similar to what's there? Does the song need something that's different? And then once you've done that, go a step deeper. Try some things and then gain a real understanding of what you're trying to say. What is this song trying to say? And you've experimented a little, and then you can zero in on it, because a lot of the stuff that makes stuff great is this process. And putting that together, and then again, including in your process, being able to step back and hear it as a listener. Hear it fresh for the first time. Hear it where you're impacted emotionally. Stand By Me was the perfect case of that. The most simple sounds, 4 or 5 tracks for the entire score, a great movie, and that thought process involved from start to finish. And if there's anything that I could tell you that's more important when it comes to programming, I can't imagine what that is. Because that's the heart of it, is the understanding of the communication component. So it's a perfect movie to make that point, and it was a great experience working with Rob, and especially having him have the foresight to step back and say, no, it's the wrong title. It's the wrong theme. I need to buy this song. We need to redo this, even though we only have a week, and the studio's going to say, how are you going to do this in a week? And we already bought one score and we have to throw more money at it. So there wasn't much money, you know, and we all face this, right? We run out of budget. So it's a creative decision, and it kicked butt. I mean, the movie's great, and it all worked. I was glad to be a part of it, and I hope you can make this a part of what you do. So stay tuned for more videos. Looking forward to making more.